Up next, we have Anaphora. Anaphora is simply the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of sentences. So anaphora is the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of sentences, and it is meant for emphasis. For example, if you say there is a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to sleep and a time to be awake, a time to play and a time to be serious. So you're just repeating a time, a time, a time. At the beginning, we refer to it as anaphora or Martin Luther King's speech. I have a dream that one day I have a dream. He just kept repeating, I have a dream at the beginning of the sentences. So we refer to that literary device or literary term as anaphora, repetition of a word or phrase. It could be a word, I came, I saw, I conquered. That's a word or a phrase like I have a dream or a time to plant, a time to harvest, a time to this, a time to that. So you just kept repeating a time to, or I have a dream that, I have a dream that, I have at the beginning of the word. We refer to it as anaphora. Then the opposite is epiphora. The opposite of anaphora is epiphora. And it's simply the repetition of a word or phrase at the end. It is simply the repetition of a word or phrase at the end of sentences. Epiphora can also be called epistrophe. It is also called epistrophe. So while anaphora has to do with repetition at the beginning, we have epiphora at the end. And a very common example is the definition of democracy, government for the people, by the people, of the people. So you see that the people being repeated at the end. Then next we have portmanteau. This has to do with joining two or more words to form a single word that will still share similar meaning to the two words it was made from. When two words are joined to form a new word that shares similarity in meaning, to the original words. So we call it portmanteau. Two words you join together to form a new word, and it's not like the word now means something different entirely. It still shares similarity to the original words from which it was formed. So a good example, we have breakfast plus lunch to give you brunch. So this is food eaten in the morning, food eaten at noon. So this is food eaten in between breakfast or lunch. So we call it brunch. So although it's a new word from, the meaning is still similar to the original words. Other examples you have rom-com, sitcom, edutainment, webinar, words like this. So we call it in literature, the literary device or literary term is called portmanteau. This literary device allows writers to explore their creative side, and it holds readers' interest. It draws their attention and be like, oh, I learned a new word. I like what the writer did with these two words, or I like what the writer did there. So that's what portmanteau does, that literary device. It's important for writers to explore their creative side. Up next, we have verisimilitude. This simply means trueness to life. Verisimilitude means trueness to life, or it is the quality of resembling reality, or it is close to the truth, something like that. So sometimes you read literary works, maybe a novel or a play, and then you are amazed at the, let's say, almost accuracy of which such literary work resembles the real thing, like what happens in the real world. And then you'll be like, are you sure this was like an imaginative thinking? Is this really fiction, or the writer actually followed like the lives of individuals and came to like put it down? Or you find out that it is actually fiction. So for such to be so accurate, they almost resemble reality, we say they have verisimilitude, which means trueness to life or the quality of resembling reality. Next, we have stanza. Stanza is a division of poems made up of two or more lines forming a unit. What this simply means is that poems are divided into stanzas. So a division of poems made up of two or more lines forming a unit. Poems are divided into stanzas, and these stanzas are usually arranged in paragraphs. So and it must contain more than a line. So a stanza starts from at least two lines, three lines, four lines. You have it, and then there's a space. Another stanza, you put a little space, another stanza. That's how we arrange poems. Stanza is a division of poems made up of two or more lines forming a unit. So like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. That I think that poem is arranged in like four lines, four lines each, forming a stanza. Four lines a stanza. Then there's a space before the next stanza, arranged in paragraphs. Now, stanzas have names according to the lines. For two lines forming a stanza, we call it a couplet. Three lines, it is called a tercet. Four lines, the stanza is called a quatrain. For five lines, it is called a quintain. Six lines, it is called a sestet. Seven lines, we call it a septet. Eight lines is an octave or octet. Nine lines, nonet. 10 lines, we call it design. So poems are divided into stanzas, and stanzas consist of at least two lines. And each stanza stands on its own as a unit of that poem, usually arranged in paragraphs, orderly in paragraphs. And stanzas are named according to the number of lines they contain. Two lines, we call it a couplet. Three lines is a tercet. Four lines is a quatrain. Five lines is a quintain. Six lines is a sestet. 7 lines septet, 8 lines octave or octet, 9 lines nonet, and the 10 line is dizaine. There are more lines. You can go and check up on names of poems having 11, 12, 13, 14 lines. That's your own work. So now stanzas must not necessarily contain rhymes. It is optional. Not all poems have stanzas that have rhymes, whatever scheme, rhyming scheme you're using. So poems that do not contain rhymes or meter, we call it a free verse. Take notes, we call it a free verse. Now, these are some of the literary terms that we are going to be looking at. We've looked at 30 of them. These are the common ones that we easily come across. So let's quickly answer some questions based on these ones that we've looked at. Questions pulled out from the O3 Schools JAMB app. Questions based on literary terms. Questions. Up first, we have diction is a writer's choice of dash. Option A, we have syntax. B, we have style. C, we have rhyme. D, we have words. When we say diction, we are dealing with the writer's choice of words. The words the writer uses in passing his message across or conveying an idea. We are dealing with diction. When we say diction, diction has to do with the choice of words. Next question we have poems that are not written in meter or regular line length are dash. Option A, we have short verse. B, we have rhymic verse. Verses, sorry, the options are S. C, we have irregular verses. And D, we have free verses. Just like what we talked about under stanza. So when the poem doesn't have a meter or regular line length or even rhyme, we refer to it as a free verse. That's what we call such poems. Another question we have a situation where an actor addresses the audience without the other actors hearing is called A soliloquy, B solo, C chorus, D aside. So we really stress the difference between an aside and a soliloquy. Where soliloquy is a character thinking out loud for the benefit of the audience, aside is a character delivering his direct comment, short comment directly to the audience, and other characters might be present, but they will pretend not to hear. While for soliloquy, other characters are not present. So the best answer for this now is aside, addressing the audience directly while the other characters do not hear or they pretend not to hear is called an aside. Number four says dash is used to describe the predetermination of a literary event in a literary piece. A, we have prolepsis. C, you have interlude. Sorry, B, you have interlude. C, we have analepsis. And D, you have fatalism. Determination of a future event in a literary piece. Sorry for the mistake. So dash is used to describe the predetermination of a future event in a literary piece. The answer here is prolepsis. Prolepsis is another name for flash forward. Flash forward, which we defined as the so another name for flash forward or prolepsis, which we defined as the as flash forward, which we defined earlier as when a narrative is moved forward in time. So a presentation of a future event in a literary piece is flash forward or prolepsis, analepsis or flashback, which is the opposite. Another question we have: the character who does not develop or experience change in the course of his or her existence in a novel is a dash character. A round, B flat, C foil, D major. A character that doesn't develop or experience any change in the course of his or her existence in a novel is a flat character. These characters do not change, they remain like the same throughout the novel. Round characters experience change, flat characters do not change. I would say a foil character is a character that has like opposing qualities to another character, while major characters are those characters that are like very important in the literary piece. So these are questions that we called out of the O3 Schools JAMB app. These questions are questions on general literary principles. If you download the app and you go to the section on past questions, you can type in a topic that you want questions from, and you get it. So you can do well to download the O3 Schools JAMB app and practice with more questions on general literary principles. Also, the next time you like read a book or see a movie, do well to try to pick out the literary terms or devices used in that literary work. Thank you so much. I'll see you all in the next video.